Welcome, all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters, to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Curcuruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation, the only podcast that goes behind the scenes to look at how conservation is done and how it's paid for in this country. I'm John Gassett with the Wildlife Management Institute. I'm your co-host for Connecting with Conservation. Here with my fellow co-host today, Jim Curcuruto from Outdoor Stewards of Conservation. How you doing today, Jim?
Doing good. It's the time of year where I've really got to be careful driving because I'm always looking up in the sky, trying to follow where the geese are going, or I'm looking in fields, or I'm looking in swamps, and it's duck season, goose season's happening now, right around the corner. And our guest today has a little something to do with that, with some of the products they make, but lots of great stories and how they support conservation. So we're going to welcome Jeff Sterner from Benelli USA. So Jeff, welcome, and why don't you give us a little background on yourself personally, what you like to do, and then we'll get into the business of Benelli.
All right. Well, thank you, John and Jim, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come on board and share a little bit about what we do at Benelli USA as we work with the various conservation groups across the nation and the great work that they do every day to allow us to participate and enjoy what we like to do, and obviously what they enjoy as well. But a little bit about me. I've been in the industry for probably pushing 20 years and, a passion for the outdoors, hunting, shooting, archery specifically. Kind of ironic. I'm with a gun company, but boy, squeezing the trigger on things that go bang has a lot of excitement to it as well. But avid big game hunter, avid bird hunter, you name it. If it's in season, I like to be participating, enjoying. My family loves the wild game meat. My son is an avid participant. My daughter has accompanied me on a few occasions. She's certainly not anti, but and I'm hoping she'll come back in a few years. But right now, she is in college, and it's not at her forefront to be in the deer woods or chasing small game right now. But nevertheless, we've had great exposure and great opportunities to have a lot of fun together.
Cool. Well, Jeff, you and I were talking the other day, and you're one of those, I won't say rare individuals, but there's, in the minority, I guess, that you said pretty much 100% of the meat y'all consume is wild game meat, whether it's deer, bear, elk occasionally, maybe wild turkey, but you don't buy a lot of meat. And that's, even a lot of diehard hunters still, have to supplement with something, but.
And there is don't you're right in some regards there, John. I mean, we still eat chicken and some pork from time to time, but the vast majority of what we consume is wild game, and whether it be venison from white-tailed deer or elk or moose or bear meat. Again, as I mentioned, if there's a season for it, we're usually chasing it, and fortunately, we've had some level of success that allow us to fill the freezer every year, and it's primarily with white-tailed deer and venison from white-tailed deer. I'm live in Pennsylvania where we've got still one buck only, but multiple antlerless deer, multiple doe tag opportunities. And between my son and I, can usually manage to put, 5, 6 deer in the freezer every year. And that'll carry us right through as we get into coming up on the season for this coming year.
Yeah, it's always scary when you're looking in your freezer. You're like, "Oh, I have one backstrap left. I want to save it for a special Asian, how much longer until I can fill my freezer again? So that's great to hear that your whole family's involved in the outdoors, which is great. But so Benelli USA, I mean, super long history, great organization. So why don't you fill us in on the actual history of Benelli and where we are today?
So most people are familiar with Benelli, the Super Black Eagle, which is our flagship shotgun. So today we are in the Super Black Eagle 3 iteration. So some continuous changes, improvements over the years, but the basis of the Super Black Eagle and Benelli shotguns in general is the inertia driven system. Many of your shotguns use a gas operated system, and in most cases, that works just perfectly. Benelli made the decision years ago to kind of use the inertia system as the basis of our semi-auto shotgun platforms. And if you have some familiarity with that system, the operation of the action it cycles off the recoil of the shell you just fired, thus eliminating a lot of the other parts that are required in a gas system. So what does that do for you? Generally, it's less maintenance, less cleaning, fewer moving parts, fewer parts that if you have to break a shotgun down in the field that, oh my gosh, I better not misplace this O-ring or this washer. Those parts are just not there in inertia driven guns. So that's that's the platform we still drive very heavily is that inertia gun, and 90% of our semi-autos across the board through our brands of Benelli, Franke, Stoger shotguns are inertia driven. Yes, we have pump action shotguns, and we do have within Benelli, we have the Benelli M4 M1014, which is the Marine Corps combat shotgun. That is a dual gas piston driven shotgun. But again, beyond that, primarily inertia guns because we've seen that they're pretty reliable, very reliable with very little maintenance.
Yeah, I can attest to that personally. My turkey shotgun is a Benelli Super Black Eagle too, and it just the thing I like about it is it works no matter what. Drop it in the mud, don't clean it for a year, what which you shouldn't do, but sometimes happens. But it always works. I've never had a problem with it, and that's
Well, to that point, John, I make a point of talking to waterfowl guides because again, Super Black Eagle is really known as a waterfowler's go-to. So where I can, I'll talk to waterfowl guides and ask them, what are you using and why? And more often than not, hey, I shoot Benelli, Super Black Eagle 2, Super Black Eagle 3. And the reason is because when my client's gun does not work, I need to keep them hunting, and thus I give them mine. So I always feel like that's as good a testimonial as you're going to get on the operating system and on the Benelli semi-automatic shotguns.
Yeah, I have several duck guns, but I have a Super Black Eagle 3, and it's definitely the lightest of the group. I don't know, maybe because of the less parts or whatnot, but man, that thing it's nice when you're trudging through some muck and, you have less weight on you, that's for sure. But very reliable, great products for sure. But you guys also make, we can't forget about rifles, right? You have a couple line rifles.
We do within the Benelli brand. We have our Lupo bolt action rifle, and we've got the R1, which is one of the few semi-automatic center fire rifles still on the market. Browning still has their BAR, but so we know that's kind of specific to certain states from a legality of usage perspective. A lot of states do not allow big game center fire semi-automatic rifles, but those that do, we do have a strong following with the R1. But the Benelli Lupo, our new, relatively new, 5 years roughly on the market bolt action rifle, is Benelli's first foray into the bolt action rifle market, and been very very successful. Really happy. What we've found is along with our shotgun barrels, the rifle barrels are cryogenically treated. What does that mean? Deep frozen down to negative 300 degrees to relieve the stress in the steel at a molecular level. So what does that do for a shotgun? Generally makes it better patterning, easier cleaning. What does that do for a rifle? Relieving that stress at the molecular level allows your bullet to exit the bore at relatively same vibration point every time you squeeze the trigger. That's what creates an extremely accurate rifle. So what we found is virtually any off-the-shelf ammunition, from your less expensive, sub $20, sub $30 boxes of deer ammo up through your premium grade, will all shoot sub MOA. So inside an inch group on a factory rifle with standard ammunition is pretty tough to beat in today's world. Most rifle makers will advertise a sub MOA, and I'm sure they all are. Oftentimes, it takes a very specific ammo to achieve that. We found that with the Lupo, we can pull one of 15 different boxes of 3006 ammo off a shelf at a local retailer, and the majority of them will shoot sub MOA.
That- That's interesting because I'd always heard about cryogenic treating. I kind of knew what cryogenic was, but didn't know what it actually did. So that's it's I shoot an old Browning A-bolt Stalker with the Boss system on it, which they quit making probably because it will deafen you even with hearing protection. But and I think that's the same thing. Is they designed it so that you could adjust the barrel to get the harmonic right. But every time you changed ammunition, you had to change the adjustment. So it was like you're chasing it constantly. So you end up just
You're
finding
100%.
one and sticking with it. So
Yeah, you're 100% on that because I'm pretty familiar with that system. And you tune your, whether it be your break or your weight at the end of the barrel with that Boss system, you tune it to your ammo. Where and it is because you're trying to manage those barrel harmonics, and that's part of what the cryo treated barrel does for you. So again, it's something that we've done in shotgun barrels for years and years, and have incorporated into the production of the rifle barrels as well.
So we like to talk about obviously all things conservation on the Connect with Conservation podcast, and Benelli USA has got a lot of ways that they support conservation. So why don't you talk about a few of those? Let us know how you guys support conservation.
Yeah, sure. I think as hunters, conservation should be, if it's not, very near and dear to us. And there's so many different groups out there, and they're all working towards, in my mind, the right thing, right? More opportunities for us, whether it be from a game animal perspective, from maintaining and growing habitat, from acquiring new lands or to be able to hunt or as public lands. But so again, all great organizations, and what we do beyond Pittman Robertson would be to offer up, in some cases, there's donation guns. We work closely with many of these groups, and donation guns that they can use to as raffle prizes to at their various events, additional fundraising opportunities on an everyday basis. The ability to purchase firearms from Benelli USA at a very attractive price point, specific for conservation, understanding that they're being used in fundraisers. So at their various events, whether it be online, in-person events, that they maximize their purchasing power by coming to us directly, to have prize guns, raffle guns at their various events. A handful of years ago, and it probably will escape me, but I did some analysis, and the average conservation group in-person event brings in about 300 people. So there's giant ones that have 5, 6, 700 people, and then there's the smaller chapters, smaller versions, but on average around 300 attendees. And I've always said, from a grassroots perspective, that number of people times the number of events from all the groups across the country to get to touch, see, and feel your product, one, certainly helps us grow our brand, but ideally that as these people know our brands, that it helps bring a premium to their fundraising efforts. That those funds obviously then go back into the conservation world to do all the things we talked about, creating habitat, helping populations, acquiring new lands, things of that nature. So that's one of the big ways we're able to contribute. And it certainly is it at a cost for the organization? Yes, it is. But their goal is to double their money on their investments. And in my work with them and our work with them over the years, we found that they're able to do that plus. So we're glad to be able to participate in that format. One of the other ways is some of the groups have their national conventions. Would love to attend those, get the feedback from you have a booth at their national conventions, get feedback from the end users. Hey, what do you like? What don't you like? What would you like to see? Sort of thing. I mean, those are the people that are out there every day. One, not only using our product, but secondly, are the forefront of the conservation efforts as well. So to be able to work hand in hand with them and to understand what works for them, and not only in the field, but from a fundraising perspective. How can we maximize their investment dollar to bring back as much as possible to turn back into conservation efforts? So yeah, those are a couple of things we do that we me personally, I'm a member, as I'm sure you guys are, of probably 8 or 10 different conservation groups. You kind of lose track, but again, every one of them certainly worthwhile, and always fun to. It's kind of like a homecoming when you go to NWTF every year, Turkey Federation down in Nashville, 83,000 attendees there. And John, I see you there every year. That it's tough to get through those aisles, but boy, certainly there's a level of excitement for the folks that are there, and there's Turkey Federation certainly is as a great a success story as probably any conservation group out there.
Yeah, it's just something everybody ought to experience. Now, if you're sensitive to loud, squeaky, repetitive noises, you might want to avoid it because it's literally of those 83,000, there'll be 50,000 trying out turkey calls at any one time. So it gets kind of noisy, but it's a
I've often wondered how good those callers really are because I don't see any turkeys running through the door.
no. And I'm living proof that you don't have to be a great caller to call turkeys. The
Absolutely.
turkeys typically can sound worse than people do making calls. But so I did, looking down your list of groups I know you work with, obviously the obvious ones with close ties to Benelli, because of either waterfowl or turkey and all that, NWTF, Ducks Unlimited, California Waterfowl Association, I know is a big one, but y'all do some collegiate work too as well, right? With some of the colleges and universities or
We do, and same thing we try to offer there is where we can. There's donation guns where we can do so, or a combination thereof. Special purchasing along with donation guns to help the various groups. I wish I had an unlimited budget for every group that comes in to ask for something, but again, to the best of our ability, we're able to offer something to everybody.
Well, I like the way your mind works on the analytics there, and it's so funny because I was gonna say I don't think there's a number that anybody's ever created about thousands of conservation banquets a year, hundreds of thousands of people. I know when I go to those things, it ain't cheap because Jim doesn't like to lose, right? I got my hand up. I buy the tickets, and when I go with my kids, I buy them the $100 tickets so they can go put them in the white buckets and try to win something I don't need. But yeah, without that, we talk about 3.6 billion, 100 million a day to conservation from just excise taxes on guns and ammo and rods, reels, lures, and hunting and fishing licenses. So I'm gonna have to scratch that one out. I'll have to back of the napkin try to come up with that a number because that's a lot more money, coming from the primary funders of conservation. Here, I'm gonna put my shirt on. Primary funders of conservation: hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters. We gotta keep telling those messages. So I'm gonna dig into that one. You got my curiosity going.
Well, I've got those numbers somewhere actually. Again, and this is certainly not all inclusive. When I look at and I don't want to leave anybody out, but when I look at the groups with the largest membership that have the most in-person events and tallied those up to their total number of in-person events with the average of 300 people per, I'll get that over to you, Jim, because I ran those numbers for an internal presentation we did a few years ago. And a lot of these groups, most of them are growing. Delta Waterfowl now pushing 400 chapters. So they continue to grow. DU, we know how big they are. NWTF, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Friends of NRA, and on and on. But yeah, it's another big chunk that yeah we probably don't necessarily consider
But we should.
into that bucket.
So anytime I go to a banquet, it's like, I see, especially if her Benelli's on an auction or a silent auction or a live auction, it's like I bid early and bid often is my rule. Because you never can go wrong with them. But a funny story about that, Jim, you mentioned you don't like to lose. Is the one that doesn't like to lose the most is my wife. And we were at Turkey's a few years ago, Jeff, and she was bidding on an African safari, and literally the auctioneer was her and one other guy, and we were sitting together along with my dad, but we weren't even talking. She wanted to buy the hunt. She was going to buy the hunt, and that's the way she is. And the auctioneer looked at her and said, "Do you need to ask your husband if you can bid higher?" Yeah, that one cost me because she was not going to lose that bid after that. And but yeah, she's the same way with firearms. I got more firearms that I don't need because she decides to buy them at auction because she's got to have another one or somebody's competing against her. So competition makes good conservation dollars, I guess.
No question about it. All it takes is two.
That's right. The right two in the room. So, well, we do talk about, the actual, core conservation dollars being the excise tax, the 10 or 11% on firearms and ammunition, pistols and revolvers, archery equipment, motorboat fuel gas comes in a different way, and angling equipment. But, there's really a handful of gun companies out there that pay the bulk of that excise tax because there's not that many gun manufacturers in the U.S. anymore. There's so many consolidation going on, but y'all are one of the bigger ones, obviously, and we just want to thank you for that. Oh, almost $1 billion a year in excise tax gets distributed to 50 state wildlife agencies to do conservation. And I can tell you, having run one of those agencies, without that money, we wouldn't have the opportunities that we have in Kentucky today. We wouldn't have elk in Kentucky today. Our turkey flock would be half of what it is now. We've done so much restoration work and so much land acquisition work with those dollars that it can't be understated how important that is to conservation. And you live in a big you live in a state that puts 1 million deer hunters in the woods on opening day. So that's I'm sure your folks around where you're at understand and appreciate it because Pennsylvania Game Commission also has a ton of public land, and that's
We do. Very fortunate.
largely
Yeah.
in part because the number of people they put in the woods, which means more PR dollars go to them. That lets them buy more land. So the message there is buy your license and buy as many firearms, as much ammunition, buy more than you need, and buy 2 licenses a year if you want to.
Yeah, I don't think they limit that.
No, no.
So you've got, you going back to your family and getting outside there. There's when you go duck hunting, there's a $25 federal stamp, and some states now have an extra $15 duck hunt one. But that money goes back to provide more access to wetlands, to build boat ramps that can be used, for fishing and for duck hunting too, when you're getting out there on the water for them too. But you mentioned archery is one of your favorite things. What's one of your louder things to do? You like, yeah, target shooting. You like trap, skeet, sporting clays, that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's all I enjoy it all. It's like everything, it's finding the time and uh, trying to figure out. All right, what with the time I have, what am I going to do? I mean, I've gotten to enjoy long range shooting a little bit more over the last several years. Uh, not necessarily for a hunt from a hunting perspective, particularly here in Pennsylvania. Gosh, 100 yards shot would be considered long range in many cases. Oftentimes hunting timber, but I've done some more Western hunting over the years. through the Rockies, and certainly you can get some longer ranges there. But just it's fun, as a bow hunter, you strive to be as close as possible. Um, so it's kind of the opposite of that with just getting out to shoot long range target. Ringing steel at 1,000 yards is there's a sense of satisfaction to that as well. Trying to read the wind, which I'm very inexpert at, but anybody with a rangefinder can tell you the range. It's the rest of the equation that makes it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, again, whatever the season is, we have an early muzzleloader deer season for antlerless only here in Pennsylvania, but an early muzzleloader bear. So we get the muzzleloaders out early for that, and we've seen more and more early bear taken during that season. Then you've got, of course, your rifle seasons, whether it be for deer and bear, and in some areas it runs concurrently here. Again, I'm talking more about Pennsylvania, but yeah, I'm not. I'm slinging arrows every day right now to get ready for hunting season, for archery season, which begins in about 3 weeks here. But at the same time, I'll be making sure the muzzle loaders are zeroed and the deer rifles are ready to go, and um, so it's a little bit of everything. It's hard to pin down a favorite.
Yeah. So I always Pennsylvania and Kentucky have a strong and long-standing relationship. A lot of Kentuckians were former Pennsylvanians. The Kentucky long rifle was actually first made in Pennsylvania, and sort of imported here, and then they brought the gunsmiths with them here to do some here. But I always thought the most interesting statistic I had to compare the two states was y'all kill more bears on your opening weekend than we have in our entire population in Kentucky. That gives you, and we have a huntable bear population. They take dozens of bears every year. They think there's 4,000 bears, in the population, and y'all shoot that many in a weekend sometimes.
Yeah, it's. I'm not sure what they're calling the bear population now. I think they're in the 15,000 range, give or take. But yeah, in a bear season, in the 32 to 3,500 range, and the opportunities have expanded. When I first started hunting bear, it was a very dedicated 3-day rifle season, as you mentioned, John, and that's now gone to a 4-day rifle season, and then there's some concurrent deer and bear. If I remember last year, there was about 28 days you could hunt bear between archery, muzzleloader, and the various rifle seasons. Where, again, going back not very long ago, you had just 3 days with a rifle. So, as I mentioned, we're seeing more bears taken with archery equipment in October. Same thing in October with the early muzzleloader season. So, yeah, the bear hunting opportunities are tremendous, although the success rate is somewhere around 2%. As we probably know, there is no baiting, no use of dogs allowed. It's strictly to call it spot and stalk would probably be inaccurate, but your best success is either organized drives during rifle season, which is very successful in some areas, some very thick cover, thick timbered areas, and then, finding travel corridors to and from likely food sources. So, that's where the success, my brother 5 years ago, 505 pounder, caught it on the edge of a standing cornfield with a muzzleloader. Tremendous bear. Tremendous bear.
Well, Jeff, I tell you what, between Benelli USA and your own personal, sounds like you're out there supporting conservation individually too, with all that licenses and stuff that you are buying and going after too. So thank you very much for telling us the stories about how you guys connect with conservation, and how can folks find out more about, Benelli USA and all the lines that you guys have?
So we've got a dedicated website for each one of our brands, Benelli, www.benelli.com, stoger.com, franke.com. Um, just Google search any one of the brands and it'll take you to the homepage, and you can find out about our products and check out our socials, and figure out what's next for your gun safe.
There you go. Bigger gun safe.
There you go. That's the starting point, right? Now you got to fill that.
That's my problem. I need a bigger safe. It's always my problem. So, well, Jeff, thanks for coming on. I've known you for a number of years. I know you've always been tremendously supportive personally for conservation as well as professionally, and it goes without saying. You live what you preach, and you live what you work. So that's we wish more were like you. But yeah, I mean you have some rough edges. I have to say that now, but you're a good guy. You do great work conservation. You work for a fantastic company. Y'all pay a tremendous amount of money and resources and product into conservation every year, and the agencies couldn't provide those resources for the hunting and shooting public without your help, and we appreciate that. Keep up the good work. Keep filling that freezer with Cessna. They have 6 to 8 deer per year. It's like the average freezer capacity is a 1.5 deer. So it's hard to control the deer population when you can't even, take 2 deer a year. So you're taking yours and somebody else's too, which we need more people doing that. So thanks for what you do. Appreciate you having it on. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this, please click the like button. Subscribe to us. That'll let you know when our next episode drops. Check out Benelli's website. Check out their products. I can attest, as Jim can, that they make outstanding, high-quality products. You'll be hard-pressed to find a better turkey or duck gun out there, I can tell you that. Thank them when you see them about all the money they put in, all the product they put in for conservation, because it is a tremendous lift for these companies to do this. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the woods or on the water. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.